Most gardeners make the same expensive mistake every single spring. They walk into a garden center, buy flats of annuals, plant them, watch them grow, and then watch them die when the first frost arrives. The next spring they do it all again, year after year, spending money on plants that are genetically programmed to disappear. There is a better way. Perennials are plants that come back every single year from the same root system. Plant them once and they return. Not just return, they spread. They multiply. They fill bare ground, crowd out weeds, and build the kind of garden that looks more established every year without you doing anything more than watching it happen. This video covers 13 of the fastest growing, lowest maintenance perennials available to gardeners across the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. Every plant on this list is verifiable at your local nursery. Every growth rate cited is documented, and every care instruction given has been tested in real garden conditions. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which plants to put in the ground this season and exactly where to put them. If you only plant one perennial this season, plant black-eyed Susan. Rudbeckia fulgida is native to the eastern United States, documented by the North Carolina extension gardener as an erect herbaceous perennial in the daisy family Asteraceae, and it is one of the most reliable garden performers available to home gardeners in USDA zones 3 through 9. The plant reaches 2 to 3 feet tall in its first growing season. Its bright golden yellow flowers with dark brownish-black centers measure 2 to 3 inches across and bloom from midsummer through early fall, and in favorable conditions through to the first frost. It spreads through 2 mechanisms simultaneously: underground stems called rhizomes that extend horizontally to form large colonies, and prolific self-seeding that drops hundreds of seeds per plant at the end of the season. A single plant purchased this spring can become a clump of 5 to 10 flowering stems by autumn, and a colony of dozens by the 3rd year. Black-eyed Susan tolerates full sun and partial shade. It handles clay soils, sandy soils, and loamy soils with equal ease. Once established, it is drought-tolerant. It has no significant pest or disease problems according to North Carolina State Extension documentation. It was selected as the North Carolina Wildflower of the Year in 1988 and is listed as one of the 20 key pollinator plants for the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. Bees, butterflies, and the silvery checkerspot butterfly use it as a larval host plant. Leave the seed head standing through winter and non-migratory songbirds will feed on them through the cold months. Plant black-eyed Susan in full sun to partial shade in any well-drained soil. Space plants 18 to 24 inches apart. Water weekly for the first 4 to 6 weeks after planting until roots establish. After that, rainfall alone will sustain an established planting in most climates. Divide clumps every 3 to 4 years in spring or autumn to prevent overcrowding and to generate new plants for free. The next plant works differently but fills ground just as fast. Purple coneflower, Echinacea purpurea, is native to the prairies and open woodlands of North America. It is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9 and blooms from summer into fall with large, daisy-like flowers in pink, purple, and white. Newer varieties extend the color range to orange, coral, yellow, and red. The distinctive spiny cone-shaped center is what gives the plant its name. Echinacea comes from the Greek word for hedgehog, echinos, describing that cone. Echinacea grows 1 to 5 feet tall depending on variety. It spreads primarily by self-seeding, dropping viable seeds that germinate readily the following spring. A well-established planting requires no deadheading to continue blooming. Simply leave the seed heads standing through winter to allow natural reseeding and to provide food for goldfinches and other songbirds. For maximum bloom production, deadhead spent flowers during the active growing season and allow the final flush of fall flowers to set seed. The plant has exceptional drought tolerance once established. It grows well in poor soils and does not require supplemental fertilizer. A thin layer of compost applied each spring is sufficient for sustained performance. It requires 6 to 8 hours of full sun for best flowering, though it tolerates light afternoon shade in hotter climates. Echinacea is both deer-resistant and rabbit-resistant, making it a reliable performer in gardens where browsing pressure is a problem. Beyond its ornamental value, Echinacea purpurea has an extensive documented history of medicinal use. It was listed in the United States National Formulary from 1916 to 1950 and is currently used in Germany, where the Commission E has approved preparations of the plant for supporting immune function. This is a perennial that feeds pollinators, feeds birds, fills ground, returns every year, and has 5 centuries of documented human use behind it. For a perennial that covers ground fast, blooms for months without stopping, and asks almost nothing in return, the answer is catmint. Nepeta ex Focinea is a hybrid that forms a mounding, spreading clump of aromatic gray-green foliage covered in lavender-blue flower spikes from late spring through frost if deadheaded periodically. In mild climates, it blooms nearly year-round. The plant grows 12 to 18 inches tall and spreads 24 to 36 inches wide in a single growing season. It spreads steadily outward from the center, filling bare ground without becoming invasive or running out of control. Hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8, it tolerates drought, poor soil, heat, and cold with equal composure. Deer and rabbits avoid it because of its aromatic foliage. Bees, particularly bumblebees and honeybees, are attracted to it in extraordinary numbers. Plant catmint if you want a garden that hums. The most popular variety for garden use is Walker's Low, named Plant of the Year by the Perennial Plant Association in 2007. Despite its name, Walker's Low grows to about 24 inches tall and spreads aggressively to create a low, dense mound of continuous bloom. Cut it back hard, to about 4 to 6 inches from the ground, after the first flush of flowers in early summer, and it will respond with a second, and often a third flush of bloom through autumn. Plant catmint in full sun to light shade in well-drained soil. It performs poorly in heavy, wet clay and will rot if drainage is inadequate. It thrives in gravel gardens and on dry slopes where most other plants fail. Space plants 18 to 24 inches apart for rapid coverage. Once established, it needs no supplemental watering in most climates and no fertilizer of any kind. Where catmint gives you low, spreading coverage, Russian sage gives you height, drama, and 4 full months of color with no effort at all. Perovskia atriplycifolia produces silvery white stems and feathery, finely divided gray-green foliage that create a cloud of texture from spring through late autumn. And when the lavender-blue flower spikes emerge in midsummer, they turn that cloud into a haze of color that lasts for months. Despite its name, Russian sage is native to Central Asia, specifically Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the Western Himalayas. It was introduced to Western horticulture and won the Royal Horticultural Society's Award of Garden Merit. It grows 3 to 5 feet tall and 2 to 4 feet wide, and is hardy in USDA zones 5 through 9. Once established, it can survive on rainfall alone in regions with 15 inches or more of annual precipitation. Russian sage grows rapidly during its first full growing season, establishing an extensive woody root system that supports fast above-ground growth in subsequent years. By year 3, a single plant can be 4 feet wide and 5 feet tall, creating a large presence in the border that suppresses weeds beneath its dense root zone. Cut Russian sage back to 6 to 8 inches from the ground in late winter or early spring before new growth emerges. New silvery stems will push from the woody base within weeks, and the plant will be full and flowering by midsummer. Never cut it back in autumn. The old stems protect the woody crown from winter cold. Plant in full sun in sharply drained soil. It thrives in gravel, sandy, and rocky soils and will decline in heavy clay. Space plants 2 to 3 feet apart. No list of fast-filling perennials is complete without daylilies. Hemerocallis is among the most forgiving, most prolific, and fastest-spreading perennials in cultivation. The name comes from the Greek hemera, meaning day, and kalos, meaning beauty. Each individual flower lasts only one day, but each plant produces dozens to hundreds of buds on branching stems called scapes, creating a succession of bloom that can last 4 to 6 weeks per plant. Plant multiple varieties with staggered bloom times, and daylilies can flower from May through September. The spread of daylilies is driven by their rhizomatous root system. Each plant produces offshoots called fans, rosettes of leaves attached to the central root mass, and a single plant can triple in fan count in a single growing season. Within 3 years, an established daylily clump can be 2 to 3 feet across and producing 30 or more bloomscapes per season. Division every 3 to 4 years maintains vigor and generates free plants. Hemerocalis is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9 for most varieties. It grows in clay, sand, loam, and everything in between. Established plants are drought-tolerant. The classic Hemerocalis fulva, the common orange daylily seen growing in ditches and along roadsides across North America, demonstrates how tenacious this plant is. It spreads for decades without any human assistance. For garden use, named cultivars offer a broader color range including red, purple, yellow, pink, cream, and bicolors. The compact reblooming variety Stella d'Oro blooms from early summer through frost without any deadheading and has received the stout silver medal, the highest honor awarded by the American Hemerocalis Society. Plant in spring or autumn in any well-drained soil. Space standard varieties 18 to 24 inches apart. Water weekly for the first month and then walk away. Moving from the upright habit of daylilies to ground-level coverage, creeping phlox is the solution to every bare slope, every difficult bank, every edge between pavement and planting bed that looks empty and difficult to maintain. Phlox subulata forms a dense, spreading mat of fine, needle-like evergreen foliage that grows flat along the ground and roots wherever the stems make contact with soil. In spring it erupts into a carpet of flowers in pink, purple, blue, white, and red that can cover an entire slope in color. Phlox subulata grows 4 to 6 inches tall and spreads 12 to 24 inches in the first growing season, accelerating in subsequent years. It is native to the eastern United States and hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. Once a mat is established, it suppresses weeds by covering the ground so completely that nothing can germinate beneath it, requires no fertilizer, and after the first growing season requires no supplemental watering in most climates. After flowering in spring, shear the plant back by 1/3 to encourage compact, dense regrowth. This is the only maintenance the plant requires. The trim takes approximately 10 minutes per square yard of established planting and results in denser coverage and stronger flowering the following spring. Pollinators, particularly native bees and early emerging butterflies, visit the spring flowers in large numbers when few other perennials are yet in bloom. For sheer visual drama combined with fast spread, bee balm belongs in every garden that receives reasonable moisture. Monarda didyma produces tubular flowers arranged in shaggy, firework-shaped clusters at the tops of 2 to 4 foot stems in shades of red, pink, purple, and white throughout the summer. Hummingbirds are irresistibly attracted to the red varieties. Bees and butterflies work every variety extensively from the first flower to the last. Monarda is native to North America and was documented for medicinal use by the Oswego people of upstate New York, from whose territory early European settlers adopted it as a tea substitute following the Boston Tea Party of 1773. The Oswego people used the leaves, which are strongly aromatic and contain thymol, the same compound found in thyme, to treat respiratory complaints and fevers. The spread of bee balm is vigorous. It travels by underground runners that extend outward in all directions, and a single plant can double or triple its footprint in one growing season. Division is simple: dig the clump in spring or autumn, separate the outer fans of new growth from the woody center, and replant the outer sections. Each division establishes itself quickly and begins flowering within the same season if planted in spring. Plant mildew-resistant varieties such as Monarda Jacob Klein or Monarda balmy pink to avoid the powdery mildew that can affect older varieties in humid conditions. Plant in full sun to light shade in consistently moist soil. Alongside bee balm in the midsummer border, Salvia nemorosa produces dense, upright spikes of purple, blue, pink, or white flowers from late spring through frost with deadheading. It was selected as Perennial Plant of the Year by the Perennial Plant Association in 1997. The recognized variety was Salvia nemorosa Maynite, known in Europe as Maynact, a deep violet-blue flowering selection that grows 18 to 24 inches tall and spreads 18 to 24 inches wide. Salvia nemorosa is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8, after the first flush of flowers in early summer. Cut the entire plant back by half and it will produce a second full flush within 4 to 6 weeks. A third flush often follows in early autumn. Each bloom cycle attracts bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. The plant is drought-tolerant once established, deer-resistant, and requires no staking. It performs best in soils that are not excessively fertile. Too much nitrogen pushes leafy growth at the expense of flowering. In 3 seasons, a group of 3 plants will cover a 4 to 5 foot width of border, with continuous color from late spring through September. For continuous bloom from early summer through frost with virtually no deadheading required, Coreopsis verticillata delivers more consistent performance per square foot than almost any other perennial on this list. Commonly called threadleaf coreopsis or tickseed, its fine, needle-like foliage creates an airy, textural quality in the border that contrasts effectively with broader-leaved plants. It is native to North America and hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. The plant grows 18 to 24 inches tall and spreads 18 to 24 inches wide in its first season, expanding steadily in subsequent years through rhizome spread and prolific self-seeding. It tolerates drought, heat, humidity, and poor soils. Unlike many perennials that require regular deadheading for continued bloom, Coreopsis verticillata continues producing flowers throughout the growing season without intervention. The most widely grown variety is Zagreb, a compact, free-flowering selection that produces golden yellow flowers from June through September and was documented in university trial gardens across the eastern United States as one of the most consistently performing perennials in poor, dry soil conditions. Plant in full sun only. It will not perform in partial shade and declines rapidly in wet, heavy soils. Where Coreopsis gives you airy texture, Shasta Daisy gives you bold, classic presence. Leucanthemum ex superbum was developed by American horticulturist Luther Burbank of Santa Rosa, California, and completed in 1901. He named it after Mount Shasta in Northern California, which he could see from his breeding gardens on clear days. It remains one of the most popular and most rapidly establishing perennials in cultivation over a century after its introduction. The plant grows 12 to 48 inches tall depending on variety and spreads by both rhizome expansion and prolific self-seeding. A single plant can spread to 24 inches across in its first full season. By year 3, an unmanaged clump can reach 36 inches across and produce dozens of flowering stems simultaneously. Hardy in USDA zones 5 through 9, it blooms from early summer through early autumn with regular deadheading. The white ray flowers surrounding a bright yellow central disc on tall, sturdy stems make Shasta Daisy one of the most useful cut flowers in the perennial garden. Stems cut when the flowers are half open last 5 to 7 days in a vase. Divide every 2 to 3 years to maintain vigor. Yarrow is one of the oldest documented medicinal plants in human use. It is named after the Greek hero Achilles, who, according to Homer's Iliad, used the plant to treat the wounds of his soldiers on the plains of Troy. Modern analysis confirms that Achillea millefolium contains compounds including achillitin and achillene that have documented astringent and mild hemostatic properties. The garden performance is equally impressive. Yarrow is one of the fastest-spreading perennials in cultivation. It spreads aggressively by underground rhizomes, covering bare ground rapidly and forming dense colonies that suppress weeds effectively. It grows 12 to 36 inches tall and can spread 24 to 36 inches from a single plant in a single growing season. Hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, it tolerates drought, poor soil, and neglect better than almost any other flowering perennial. The flat-topped flower clusters appear in white in the wild species, and in shades of red, pink, yellow, orange, and cream in cultivated varieties. Butterflies and beneficial insects, including parasitic wasps that control garden pests, visit yarrow flowers in large numbers. Plant yarrow in areas where wide coverage is the goal, on difficult slopes, in meadow-style plantings, or along the margins of naturalistic landscapes. In formal borders, plant it within a buried root barrier or plan to divide and remove outer growth each spring to maintain its position. Goldenrod suffers from an unfair reputation. Millions of people blame it for autumn hay fever. The actual cause of hay fever at that time of year is ragweed, Ambrosia artemisiaefolia, whose pollen is wind-dispersed and nearly invisible. Goldenrod pollen is sticky and heavy, carried by insects rather than wind, and is essentially harmless to hay fever sufferers. The plant blooms visibly and abundantly in autumn when everything else is winding down, and gets blamed for a problem it does not cause. This misattribution has led to decades of underuse of one of the best late-season perennials available. Solidago rugosa, specifically the cultivar fireworks, grows 3 to 4 feet tall and spreads 2 to 3 feet wide. Its arching stems bend outward under the weight of their bright yellow flower clusters in a pattern that does indeed resemble exploding fireworks. It blooms from late August through October in USDA zones 4 through 9, providing critical nectar for migrating monarch butterflies and for native bees that are building their winter stores. University of Delaware entomologist Dr. Doug Tallamy has documented goldenrod as one of the top 5 most ecologically valuable perennial plants for supporting native insect populations in North American gardens. His research found that goldenrod supports 115 species of butterfly and moth caterpillars. Cut it back to 6 inches from the ground in early spring. Divide every 3 to 4 years to maintain vigor. The final plant on this list closes the gardening season with more color and more pollinator value than almost anything else in the autumn garden. The perennial sedums, formerly classified as sedum and now reclassified in the genus Hylotelephium, are among the most reliable, lowest maintenance perennials available for gardens in USDA zones 3 through 9. Hylotelephium spectabile, commonly called stonecrop, grows 18 to 24 inches tall and 18 to 24 inches wide, forming a substantial clump of thick, fleshy, blue-green leaves topped in late summer and autumn by large, flat-topped flower clusters in shades of pink, red, and white. The flowers emerge white and fade progressively through pink and mauve to rust as the season advances, providing a color sequence that spans from August through November in most climates. The dried flower heads and seed capsules persist through winter, providing structure and bird food during the cold months. Sedum flowers after most other garden perennials have finished and provides one of the last major sources of late-season nectar for bees building their winter stores. Any stem removed during division or breakage that is placed in moist soil will root and produce a new plant within 2 to 4 weeks. Plant in full sun in well-drained soil. The most widely grown variety is Autumn Joy, documented in a 30-year observational study in German botanic gardens as one of the most consistently performing and longest-lived perennial cultivars in cultivation. All 13 of these plants can be combined into a complete, self-sustaining garden that fills itself in, suppresses its own weeds, feeds pollinators from April through November, and requires no annual replanting. Use creeping phlox and yarrow as ground-level coverage along borders, slopes, and edges. Plant catmint, black-eyed Susan, coreopsis, and salvia in the middle tier. These reach 18 to 36 inches tall and provide the bulk of midsummer color with a combined bloom period spanning late spring through early autumn. Place bee balm, Russian sage, daylilies, and purple coneflower behind the middle tier. These reach 3 to 5 feet and create the structural backbone of the planting. Shasta Daisy and Goldenrod fill the late-season gap when most gardens look tired and empty. Sedum anchors the autumn finale, continuing to provide color, structure, and pollinator support until hard frost ends the growing season. The investment is made once. The garden improves every year without being rebuilt. Each plant listed here has been in continuous cultivation by home gardeners for decades because it performs reliably across a wide range of conditions without demanding the kind of intervention that annual plantings require. Plant now. Divide in 3 years. Share the divisions with someone else who is still buying annuals every spring. The garden you build this season will be larger, fuller, and more beautiful next season without you spending another dollar on it. That is what a perennial garden does.